Entitled Parents, who didn't shy away from showing me that I was a mistake, unwanted, and unworth. My entitled parents, who didn't shy away from showing me that I was a mistake, unwanted and unworthy of their love, finally kicked me out of the house in favor of my golden child sister. Now, they expect my money and have filed a case believing it's rightfully theirs, only to get DSGSTD faces from the court's judge for the way they treated me. I don't know why, but my post from r/entitled parents was removed. My friend, who helped me set up this account, repeatedly asked me to post the story, and now she says it's too good not to place it here. So fine, I'll do this one more time. As others may know, I mentioned in my HOA post how my parents hated me and only loved my sister. This is the story of that. I was born when my mother and father were only 17. It forced both of my parents to drop out of high school and each get a GED so they could find work right away. My father, in particular, was not happy about this because he had dreams of playing football in college but instead had to work at a gas station. He said to my face many times that I had ruined his dream. My mother hardly raised me at all, as she had to work too. They had a cranky old lady next door watch me most of the time. She wasn't so bad, she gave me more attention than my parents did. My father eventually managed to land a better job as a manager due to his experience running the gas station. It was right after that my mom got pregnant with my sister. I was 6 when she was born. I wasn't exactly shown much love before that, but once my sister came along, it was pretty obvious to even my 6-year-old self that I was unwanted. The only ones who seemed to care were my paternal grandparents and somewhat my babysitter, and they were more like my parents because they treated me the way a little kid needed to be loved. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, and as my sister got older, it went from me sharing a bedroom with her to me being kicked out of the room entirely. I slept on the couch for 2 years, and I barely had anything to my name other than clothes, school supplies, and an old Game Boy. When I was 10, my parents decided they were going to move away, but this move did not include me. I ended up actually being fine with this, as my grandparents had agreed to take me in. My life was instantly better. I got my own room again, and my grandparents gifted me a brand new N64 in 1996. That Christmas, I got a Game Boy Pocket too, and there were a couple of other kids my age in the neighborhood I got to hang out with. We rode bikes, played video games, shot cans with pellet guns, built forts, and got dirty playing in the creek, you know, stuff a normal kid would enjoy. I was finally happy. As time went on, I grew up and eventually moved out, but later I moved back in to help my grandparents with the house as they were getting old and living off their retirement savings, so some rent money from me went a long way toward paying the bills. My grandpa was the kind of person who wanted to build a bomb shelter during the Cold War but never got around to it. He wanted to volunteer for the military in the 1960s but was turned down due to a medical condition and the fact that his eyesight was not great, so he focused on saving whatever he thought he needed. He told me many times that it was better to have something and not need it than to need it and not have it. Our area suffered from numerous power outages in the winter due to heavy winds and storms, so having gasoline and propane for heaters and generators was a must. All these saving habits became my own as time went on because it was better to need this stuff rarely than not have it at all. Of course, the HOA was bothering us, but that's its own story. The problem is that about 5 years ago, my grandma died suddenly, and my grandpa was heartbroken. He also went about a year and a half later. Pretty much everything they own was given to me, their savings, their house, their vehicles, their stuff, everything. The house was long paid off, and Grandpa knew how to keep up with its maintenance. In fact, after Grandma died, he kind of doubled down on renovating the place. He had the roof redone, the house was repainted by us inside and out, and we fixed a lot of little things. Grandpa's neighbor George even came by to help redo the plumbing. Ironically, the HOA was rather happy with these changes because the house didn't look run down anymore. One morning, I was fixing breakfast, and my grandpa never came downstairs. You couldn't keep the man from his bacon, so I went to check on him, and he wasn't moving. I called 911, and paramedics came only to tell me he'd passed in his sleep. My parents made Grandpa's funeral a show. They didn't bother to show up for Grandma's, they were too busy. At Grandpa's funeral, they didn't seem to grieve at all. My sister also showed up wearing a brightly colored designer dress, which I wasn't happy about as it was a church clothes-only function. I noticed my parents repeatedly whispering to each other and glaring at me whenever I looked at them. I came to find out at the will reading that my parents knew they'd been disinherited long ago for their treatment of me, and they thought it was extremely unfair that I got everything. They threatened to sue me to contest the will, and I got repeated calls and messages from my father, mother, and sister telling me I needed to do the right thing and give my father what was supposed to be his. I told them all to flake off in far more unsavory words. My parents ended up taking me to court to challenge the will, but the judge ruled in my favor after seeing the will and hearing us both out, so it wasn't a long, drawn-out legal battle. The judge even looked at my parents with absolute disgust after seeing their will and hearing about their mistreatment of me in my childhood. He called my father a terrible parent and said that my grandparents were right to disown him. My father just hung his head in silence, but he made sure to stop me outside the courtroom and tell me I was always the biggest mistake of his life and that if he could go back in time, he'd make sure I never existed. He should have been a football star, and instead, he has to wear a name tag from 9 to 5. I told him that mistake or not, Grandma and Grandpa could see what kind of nasty person he was. I didn't ask to be born, and the only real love I ever got was from my grandparents. He was no father of mine anymore. I got a few more THRTNNG and harassing phone calls as well as some letters from my parents, all demanding money among other things. But over time, they just stopped because I completely stonewalled them. I never responded to the emails or letters, and I stayed silent during the phone calls. A few times, I just left the phone sitting on the counter with them ranting until they realized I wasn't listening. Aside from not getting the house or money, my parents seemed particularly irked they could not even get a rise out of me. But I was prepared to go to war against them, and they knew it, so in the end, they just left me alone. From what I know, looking at Facebook over the past decade, my sister tried to get into modeling, got married, had 2 kids, got divorced, and is currently unhappily working a job she feels is beneath her. My mother currently works in retail and is also vocal about her disdain for it. Like my father, she peaked in high school. She was a cheerleader back then, and she even had her old uniform framed on the wall. My father has pretty much had the same job for 25 years. He must be good at it if he's still doing it. As for me, well, I'm in my late 30s now, and I live pretty much debt-free in a nice neighborhood. I haven't really had a girlfriend since high school, and I've had little motivation to ever have another relationship, but loneliness gets to everyone, so maybe I'll try to find someone soon. Not many are in the financial position I'm in at my age, single, paid-off house, 2 vehicles, and a decent amount in the bank. I guess I could aim to be a stepfather. That might be more my speed. Second story, my ex came out as a lesbian and divorced me, ruining 11 years of my life. Now she is giving advice on how to raise my son, so I lashed out at her, making her cry. Now my son has taken her side and demands that I apologize, THRTNG, to cut ties with me. I'm a 40-year-old male. My ex, 40-year-old female, came out as a lesbian to me in early 2020. As you can imagine, I was gutted to the extreme, and I haven't dated or had relationships at all since. I don't see the point. I haven't shared a relationship with her other than co-parenting my son, 18. The reason I say my son is because he is not biologically hers. He was my son from a previous relationship, and I was a single parent until I met her. She's been the only mom he's ever known, so I've never stood in the way of that. Since we've split, he's primarily lived with me, even though he sees her as much as he wants. He's recently started a new job, and his trainer/mentor at his job is an ex-colleague of mine, who I'll call E, 39. Female. She was a good mate at work for 3 of the last 4 years. In fact, I would say she was my bestie. When she left, I haven't spoken to her much. My son's always talking about how much he talks about me, asks about me, and teases me about how he thinks she has a crush on me. I usually just laugh it off. The other day, though, he was really excited when he came home from work. Basically, he's been invited to his work's Christmas party, and everyone is allowed to take A+1. So, he's taking his girlfriend. He then said to him she doesn't have anyone to take, and said to him she'd love me to be her +1 and take me. I just laughed, as I always do, and said, yeah, imagine that. He seemed really quiet after that, so I asked him what's up. He basically said, I love you, Dad, but I don't understand you. You're letting your life go by, and all you do is just sit at home and play games on your PC. You don't do anything or see anyone other than me, and you don't have any friends. You need to start getting out there and enjoying life more, otherwise, you'll be a lonely old man. I basically told him to shut up and mind his own business, and I won't take life advice from an 18-year-old. He just got up, walked out, and said he was going to stay with his mom. Not long after, my ex called me, saying he's upset. I told her I should be upset after the way he spoke to me, but then she hit me with the old cliché, we're all family, they're just worried about you, which I told her is ironic because she wasn't that worried about me when she decided she was finally a lesbian and wasted 11 years of my life. She called me a CNT and hung up. I messaged my son to tell him to come home, and he told me he heard our argument and my ex is crying, and he doesn't want to come home until I apologize. I told him it wasn't happening and I don't have anything to apologize for. I vented to my mom yesterday about it, who usually has my back throughout everything, and she said he has a point because she thinks I should move on too and get a nice girlfriend, and that I'd make someone very happy. She's not said that to me at all since my split. So now, here I am, venting to complete strangers. Blah A for not apologizing. Edited to add, Please stop suggesting therapy. I did see a therapist and stopped going after a couple of sessions because they were more concerned about my ex coming out and were judgmental about my anger. I'm really not a fan. Update: I was just sitting here and thought to myself, I feel like I owe an explanation that I wasn't going to go to the party with her. So I rang her, and we had a little chat. I actually forgot how cool she is, and she was really nice and understanding when I told her I didn't want to go. She caught me off guard, asking if rather than that, we just meet up for coffee tomorrow, maybe just as mates. So I said, F it, why not? And I'm going for coffee with her. I haven't spoken to my son yet, but I'm sure I will soon. Update: apology, folks. I deleted my account because it got a bit heated and overwhelming, but my son told me to create a new account and update you all as he saw the original. I just want to thank you all for your help and comments. Even though you all deemed me the a-hole, there was some great advice there. Apologies to those I snapped at who were just trying to help. However, those of you who called me things like a miserable CNT, misogynist, homophobe, narcissist, autistic, and even the person who said I should abandon my son for a better role model, I don't apologize to the likes of you. There's constructive advice and tough love, and there's just plain being mean. Anyway, I did apologize to my son. I said basically that I really didn't mean what I said and I was a knob, basically. And it's not true about his age, he's the brightest, nicest lad I know, and I was just lashing out because I knew he was right. Even though he did accept, he said he's standing by what he said and I do need help. And as he saw in my last post, I need therapy. No arguments. If I want him home, admittedly, I'm not a fan and don't think it'll do much. But if it means keeping my son happy, I'll do anything. So I found one I've made contact with and I'm going to see tomorrow. He also said he's angry about the way I spoke to his mom and needs to make it right. Edited to add, the reason why I'm so angry and said she wasted 11 years is that she got with me knowing that she had feelings towards women but tried to hide them due to her upbringing. After 2 abusive relationships, she got with me purposely with the intention that a good guy like myself, her words, would get rid of the feelings and she could be straight. It didn't work, of course, and it bled out into the relationship. She hardly ever wanted to do anything or go away, and she never wanted me to propose. Now that she's in a lesbian relationship, they're always out on dates or holidays, and the girlfriend proposes, and she's accepted. Not only that, she admitted that SXXX was something she really struggled with and had to convince herself each time to go through with it. And when she did initiate it, it was because she was turned on to thinking about women. So as you can imagine, that last part particularly makes me feel like I forced her each time, and it killed my libido. I didn't really want to apologize to her. Still, as in my opinion, I'm still angry. But I know how much it means to him, so we went over to hers, and I did apologize. I basically said, I'm not going to lie and say my feelings aren't still the same, but I shouldn't have spoken to her like that, as she was just looking out for our son and trying to help. So I apologize. Now, usually she isn't the sort of person who forgives or accepts apologies, but as I could see, she knew how much it meant to our son, so she accepted. Me and her are going to keep low contact for the foreseeable future until I sort my head out. At least now on to my coffee. Second story. Basically, it was amazing. It was supposed to be a short catch-up, but we ended up talking for hours. I had a lovely time, and so did she. We initially said we'd maybe only do it every couple of weeks, but last night we were texting and mentioned we both wanted to go and see the new Saw film. So we'll hopefully try and catch that this weekend. We're both excited, and so is my son. If you listen to him, it's like we've announced an engagement or something. Hopefully, this post is allowed, and thanks all again for my last kick up the ARs. Third story. Update: I thought I'd provide you all with an update, as I've had a great week and I'm 100% better than I was this time last week. I had a preliminary therapy session on Wednesday. I went private and paid for one, rather than waiting on the NHS. Obviously, it was only the first one, so nothing much happened, but I have had good vibes so far. He seems like a nice guy. Then I had my date with E at the pictures last night. It's weird to say it was a date because we both went with the intention of being 2 friends going to the pictures only, but it certainly felt like a date. I went all out, got a new haircut, trimmed my beard, bought a new outfit, everything basically, gave myself a glow up. My son was amazed, kept hyping me up, and was all proud, which given that this time last week we weren't talking was a lovely feeling. And she was definitely impressed. She was all flirty with me, saying lots of nice things. I've never seen this side of her, as we've just been friends up until now. So seeing firsthand how she's actually attracted to me and actually made an effort for this date, my ex never cared about making an effort for dates in the whole 11 years we were together, was so refreshing. It made me genuinely attracted to her. And considering I've been basically as true for the last near 4 years, that's a big thing. We actually stayed out for hours after the date, just talking and getting some food, and really got along well. I said I'm happy to be her +1 for the Christmas party too. She was ecstatic. I haven't told my son yet, but I know he'll be happy too. I keep on finding myself doing silly things like looking at her name on my phone and smiling. I nearly sabotaged it when I got home by going on social media and seeing my ex's profile. I was thinking about my date with E and how great the date was and how much effort she put in. And then I thought about how little my ex used to put in, and she now goes on lots of dates and shows off how happy she is on her social media. So I made the decision to block her profile. I feel so much better for doing it, and I think it'll be so much better for me going forward. I'm going to just stick to talking about our son and ensure I don't hear about her life, and I'll make sure my son doesn't tell her about my life going forward. So on the whole, I'm doing well. Fourth story. Weekend update. I've created a third and final account to provide an update, as my son was a Redditor, and I know he would have liked me to provide an update. He sadly died a few weeks after my last post. He was on a night out with his friends, was drunk, and apparently did some drugs. He went back to his girlfriend's house, and unfortunately, he was sick in his sleep and choked on his own vomit. I got a very distraught call from her and her parents in the morning telling me they couldn't wake him and were calling an ambulance. I'll never get her voice or how panicked or disturbed she was out of my mind for as long as I live. I reconciled with my ex to plan the funeral, at least, and I will say this, she was a godsend. Despite not being his biological mother, she was his mom. I saw just how much she loved him when we planned his funeral. I couldn't have done it without her. Even though I hadn't had no plans for a friendship with her, she was determined to keep in contact with me, so I've allowed it. I just have no desire to argue anymore. His egg donor was told, and she said she was sad but couldn't face coming. Good. I think had she wanted to come, I'd have possibly spat in her face, or my ex would have possibly shouted so much that she'd have bailed anyway. He was also a comfort for a little while. She was there for me like a true friend, although sadly, we haven't spoken much since. She still wanted me to go to the Christmas party as a tribute to my son, but I couldn't face it, so I bailed at the last minute. Apparently, it was amazing, and they did a 1-minute silent work for him. She said she understood, but I think she was hurt, and the contact has been less and less of late. I last heard from her on his birthday last month. I don't think I'll be around much longer. I haven't taken my blood pressure tablets in a while, and I pretty much drink myself to sleep these days. I don't have anything to live for anymore. I just want to go to sleep and wake up to see myself again one day. He was the one and only thing I have ever done in my life that was good, and I can't face the fact that I'll never see him again. If I can give advice to anyone who is a parent, it is to hug your kids and tell them you love them, never ever fall out, and if you do, apologize, no matter what, because you never know if you'll one day not see them again. Thanks to all for your advice and support in my original posts. I appreciate it more than you know. You at least gave me a few weeks of nice memories with my son. Fifth story. Third story, my sister demanded that I break up with my girlfriend, believing she cheated on me. Then stalked both of us, so I cut ties with her. Now she broke into my house for evidence, so I got her arrested. That's how she got divorced and is going to give birth in prison. Now, Mom blames me for ruining my sister's life and has cut ties with me. I, 25, am in an open relationship with my girlfriend Ivy, 24. We both have multiple partners, hookup buddies, and FB, and we're quite happy with our arrangement. My relationship with my sister Tasha, 30, has been strained since 2 years ago when she caught Ivy with another man in our apartment. Tasha had an emergency key, which she made liberal use of. She let herself in and saw them going at it on the couch. Instead of leaving and giving them privacy like a normal person, she berated Ivy and chased the man out of the apartment. She then called me and proceeded to scream at me that I needed to break up with Ivy for cheating. I had a sit-down conversation with her where I explained that what Ivy did wasn't cheating and that I'd known she was bringing someone over and that's why I wasn't there. I also took her key at that point. I was just trying to gently educate her and get her to stop bothering me. She then proceeded to try to convince me to not only break up with Ivy but to break up all my current partners and settle down, meaning get into a monogamous relationship, I guess. I told her to BTT out because my sexual or romantic life is none of her business, and when she still wouldn't back off, I lowered my contact level with her. Last week, Tasha reached out and asked to make things up with me because she's pregnant and wants me to have a chance to know my future nephew. When I asked, she said that Ivy was invited as well. Ivy and I were hesitant, but we agreed to come over to her house for dinner. When we arrived, she showed us to the table, and instead of dinner, the table was covered in printed photos of either myself or Ivy with another person. There were pictures of us at bars, pictures of us coming and going from our apartment building, and even one of me at a strip club with a dancer in the shot. Ivy and I were horrified, and Ivy was especially freaked out because she has experience with stalkers. I asked her what the hell was going on, and she said that she was staging an intervention for our chronic cheating addictions. She said that she was breaking us up and I was banned from seeing Ivy ever again. I took a deep breath, told her that what she had done was off the deep end, and explained that she couldn't ban me from anything because, for F's sake, I'm a grown man. I told her that I'd be pursuing a restraining order and managed to snap some pictures of her stalker spread. Ivy and I then left, though Tasha tried to stop us. I'm taller and more muscular than her, so she couldn't actually do much. I blocked her number when we got home. Yesterday, my mom contacted me to basically tell me that even though how she went about it was wrong, Tasha was only trying to help. I tried to explain that what she did was seriously psycho, and my mom said that it wasn't her fault because she'd parentified Tasha and Tasha was being motherly because it's the only way she knows. My mom offered to try to get Tasha into therapy if I didn't cut her out or go for a restraining order. I told her that until my sister got serious help, I refused to communicate with or be in the same space as Tasha. My mom told me that I couldn't do this because Tasha is my sister, but I held my ground. Update: alright, folks, this is a doozy, so buckle up. So, first off, Ivy and I went to our landlord to basically tell him the bare bones of what's going on and asked to change our locks because he's a massive douchebag. He wouldn't let us, unfortunately. It's in the lease that we can't change the locks without his permission. Ivy didn't feel safe in our apartment, so she went to stay with her brother. I stayed behind so that if Tasha did try anything, I'd be there to protect our stuff and be a witness for the police. In the meantime, my mom and Bill swore up and down that they'd get Tasha into therapy and begged me not to go for any kind of protective or restraining order. Ivy and I reluctantly accepted. It was a mistake. For a while, it looked like Tasha was actually getting the help she needed. My mom texted me updates every couple of days about how Tasha was in a better mood, how she was less angry, less paranoid, and less stressed. I was optimistic that Ivy might be able to move back into the apartment and that maybe I could meet my nephew someday. Then, about a month and a half ago, I was up late, about 2 a.m. if I had to say, and heard the lock click and the door open. At first, I thought it was Ivy, so I came out into the living room expecting to see Ivy's beautiful face. But instead, I found Tasha going through my kitchen drawers. At first, I was absolutely stunned. Tasha and I stared at each other for a solid 10 seconds. She had this bug-eyed look, somewhere between a deer in headlights and a child caught with her hands in a cookie jar. Then, once I got my wits back, I blew up at her. I screamed at her to give me the duplicate key and get the F out of my house. Once she did, I pushed the couch up against the door and called 911. At this point, I was so hopped up on adrenaline that I spent the rest of the night talking to the police and calling Ivy, my mom, and Bill. I finally crashed with Ivy and her brother around 6 a.m. Long story short, Tasha was arrested for burglary and criminal trespassing, and of course, my mom bailed her out. She pleaded not guilty like an idiot, even though there was a security camera right outside my apartment door. In the end, she was convicted of criminal trespass because even with my photos of her stalker spread, they couldn't prove that she had intended to commit a crime once inside. She was just sentenced to a year in prison and a fine. Last week, I feel like I can finally breathe again. In the meantime, our landlord finally let Ivy and me change our locks, and we're back to living in the apartment together. But needless to say, we won't be renewing our lease. Ivy especially has been really shaken up, so once our lease is up, we'll be moving far, far away. We both have remote jobs, so this shouldn't be too much of a problem. My Bill, for his part, is absolutely devastated. He's worried about his future son and Tasha being pregnant in prison. He's let me know that he's going to file divorce papers once she gives birth but that he still wants me and my future nephew in his life. I'm glad for that. I can't wait to meet the little dude. I honestly feel bad for my Bill. Being a single parent is going to be hard for him, and the only thing he did wrong was marry my psycho sister. My parents have cut me out entirely. They think I'm a monster for calling the cops on my sister and getting her sent to prison while she's pregnant. Maybe I am, but I did what I had to do to protect myself and my girlfriend. I almost didn't post this update, but I figured I couldn't leave you guys hanging. I don't think I'll be updating anymore though. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you.